Hello, everybody. Brian and Leslie Fatherees here from the Unbreakable podcast, the Unbreakable Marriage and Unbreakable Family Ministries, coming to you today in the first week of November. Actually, we're recording right here on November 1.
Yay!
So, we, in the month of November, because November is a big family month, right?
Yep.
We've got all sorts of stuff going on in November and even into December that celebrate family, celebrate togetherness, and things of that nature. So we want to really lean into family in the month of November.
Yes.
And what we want to talk to you about in the month of November is the functional family.
Yes.
Now, most of you are sitting there going, well, why are you talking to me? That's not my family. We're all dysfunctional. That's a lie. That's a big lie. Oh, let me stop real quick and let you know we're praying for you, Israel, and we're believing for God to resolve the conflict that's going on throughout that country, north, south. I mean, they're being attacked from all sides. So we're believing for God to intervene on their behalf. Now, back to our original scheduled program. We're going to be talking about functional family and what the difference is between dysfunction and being unique. Because the world, the culture, our culture, especially in America, have been spending decades telling you and showing you that every family is dysfunctional. There have been very few families on movies or TV that have been functional. Very few.
And they want to tell you that you're all alike.
Right.
Everything dysfunctional. Everybody has it.
Right. You know, because when they first started depicting families on television, it was probably in the 50s. And you got Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver. You've got, all these family, functional, family-oriented shows. And that was true. And they were celebrating the fact that families worked like that. They did show some of the fun things and the uniqueness, some stuff. There was humor in there, stuff that kids do, stuff that parents do, stuff that parents have to do because they have kids. All that was displayed. But then in the 60s, it took a turn.
Yeah.
It took a turn, and they quit doing that because they're like, this is not the real thing. It was, but they had an agenda to create a culture in our country that was dysfunctional.
In America, the minority has a very loud voice.
Yeah.
And they tend to get listened to, and they tend to get things changed when actually they're a very small part of American culture.
Yeah.
And that's what happened as the movie and television industry entertainment industry picked up on these loud shouts from these minority kind of people. They started to sway them into going the other direction.
And when we say minority, we're not talking racial minority.
No.
We're talking ideological minority.
Yeah. Anything that's just a few number of people thinking in that way.
Yeah, and so we just want someone to look at these white racists. No. None of that at all.
No.
But they had a small group of people who decided what everyone should be like.
Right.
And we still have that going on in our culture, in our nation, and it's a sad thing. So we want to debunk the myth of dysfunction.
Sure.
And we want to celebrate the God-given truth of uniqueness in your family. So we're going to talk about dysfunction first, and then we're going to talk about what God's plan for you is, which is being unique. And by unique, it means you are different. You do stand out. And there's a specific, special thing that you have for yourself. We grasp that pretty quickly for individuals, but we don't grasp that in family.
Right.
So let's talk about dysfunction. She has
I have some
definition and notes on dysfunction. So I'm going to let Leslie start, and then we'll go from there.
I looked up dysfunction just to have a working definition to go by. And so it said that it is a deviation from the norms of social behavior regarded as bad. So like some indicators of dysfunction would be abuse, neglect, no boundaries or rules is an indicator of there's dysfunction going on. I think that there has to be structure to your family.
Yes.
So sometimes structure is missing. A dysfunctional family has no clear expectations or rules, and they have incongruent roles. So nobody's where they're supposed to be, and
Right.
they're not functioning together. The roles of family are not functioning together.
Yeah. And have you ever been around or watched where the children run the house? Happens a lot in our culture right now. I remember a comedian talking about he was outside and he was talking to a neighbor, and then a neighbor's kid was talking to the mom, and the mom said, just a minute, I want you to meet this person. And his kid, I'm not going to say what the kid said, but he said something, and he told his mom to shut up. And the person that they were going to meet was a celebrity. The celebrity, I saw this in an interview, and the celebrity's like, oh my word. If Dad said that to my mom,
Yeah.
I'd have woke up next week
Mm-hmm.
because my mom would have taken me out. And it's a matter of respect and honor, which we're going to address really deeply at the end of the month. But we're going to touch on it. You can't help but touch on it as we're talking about functional and dysfunctional.
Right. Yeah.
So a dysfunctional family is a family where maybe everybody's there, mom, dad, kids, whatever, but no one actually works in that role like they're supposed to work in that role, or they're there and like I'll never forget, we had a young man at a church we were pastoring over 10 years ago, and I'll never forget his girlfriend that he was cohabitating with had gotten born again, had gotten saved. That's Jesus into her heart. And like on Sunday, so here we are on Wednesday night having a service, and we're wrapping up the service, and this girl's dragging her boyfriend in literally by his ear. And we're done. We're done. She drags him up to the altar area, by the pulpit area, and she's like, Pastor, he needs to get saved. Get him saved. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not exactly how that works. But as I said, well, I can pray with you. And I started talking to the young man. Didn't assume anything. His style of clothing and fashion expressed some things that I can make some assumptions. And so at one point I just leaned in and I asked him, I said, when did your dad check out of your life? At what age? He may have been physically there, but he checked out spiritually, he checked out emotionally, he checked out in every aspect besides living in the house. What age was it when that happened? And he looked at me and goes, how did you know that? And I go, well, I really didn't, but I can make some assumptions based on some things I'm seeing. And
the Holy Spirit.
And the Holy Spirit was prompting me, yeah. And so he looked at me and goes, that's crazy that you know that. He goes, I was 6 years old. 6 years old. And so his family was dysfunctional, which created a dysfunction in him that he was carrying through into the next generation. And we had a very heartfelt, deep conversation. He did give his life to the Lord that night. We had a great conversation. I'll never forget when he came back to me about 3 or 4 weeks later. He's like, this Christianity stuff sucks. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I could do anything I wanted before I decided to do this, and now I do stuff and I feel guilty about it. It's like, welcome to Christianity. Sorry. And so, but he had to learn that what he was doing that he felt was normal was actually dysfunctional. And God was changing his heart. And God was changing his activities and his actions. But dysfunction becomes normal when it's practiced on a regular basis.
When it goes on for years and years.
Yeah. She talked about abuse and neglect. So let's take abuse. If you're in an abusive relationship, you should get out, because it's not functional. It's not right.
And God has no desire for you to be abused.
Not when, and we've seen it both ways. It's usually the man abusing the woman, but we've seen the woman abuse the man.
It could be just verbal. It could be physical.
It could be violent in some cases, or it could just be just demeaning, and just completely verbal and putting each other down. All of those kinds of things. And so it's abusive. And so as a child, I'm watching that. I'm thinking that's normal because that's my world. And so that's one of the reasons it's hard to debunk the myth, the lie of dysfunctionality, because when that's all I've seen,
Right.
when that's all I've known,
Yeah.
then that becomes how life functions
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Right.
So why would I change anything else?
Mm-hmm.
When people get around something else, they're like, oh, that's really, really different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
and that's called functionality.
Mm-hmm.
And so neglect. Parents neglect their children because they're too busy trying to find themselves
Mm-hmm.
and chase the dollar or do all these things that they do.
Parents neglect each other.
All totally.
Yeah. So husband and wife are neglecting one another, not
Right.
spending time together, not building a relationship and growing in
Right.
the relationship. And that's the beginning of then neglecting the others in the family.
It is. And that's one reason we have divorce and we have kids living with aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and
Mm-hmm.
all of those kinds of things. And then she put on there no boundaries, there's no rules. And so, as a youth pastor for years and years and years, I would work with young people
Mm-hmm.
and I would challenge them and I would get after them to do what's right. And they're like, well, my parents don't even love me. And I'm like, well, what do you mean they don't love you? Why would you say that? And I'm like, because they let me do anything I want to do.
Right.
And if I had $1 for every young person who told that to me,
Mm-hmm.
male and female,
Yep.
I'd be wealthy. It was amazing to me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't comprehend that.
Right.
But go ahead.
Yeah. Excuse me. I think we said it before, but God is a God who gives us boundaries
Yeah.
and guidelines in His Word and tells us how we are to live our life. And He does that because He loves us.
Right.
And so we then are to imitate God. We are to have boundaries and limitations and rules, if you will, for our families, so that there is love being expressed. That
Yes.
that this is a boundary. This is a place where we don't go past this because we're watching over you.
Yeah.
Because we're looking out for your safety, for your future, for your education. We're looking out for
Right.
whatever, for your health. It doesn't matter. But as a parent, we watch out for our children.
Yeah.
We have rules and boundaries that keep them safe. And that's what the purpose of those are. They've been attacked in our
Completely.
culture completely. Rules. Why should we have rules? Nobody needs rules. I can have my own rules, my own truth, my own rules.
Yeah.
I can do it my own way. But that's dysfunctional because it's leading you into a life that is not working. And if it seems to be working, at some point it will fall apart because God says there has to be these rules and guidelines of behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. We've watched families allow rebellion, and we with their children, we watch them allow back talking. Like I'm thinking of a particular family that I know very closely, and one of their children was really small, probably 5, 6 years old. They had picked up some language from their father, and who swore like every third word, and all of a sudden, this child was swearing.
Yeah.
At the age of 5 or 6, and they're like, "Isn't that just funny? It's so cute. It's so wonderful."
Except when the school started calling them, and
Yeah, and we're like, "No, it's not." And we were looked at like the dysfunctional people because, well, all children learn to do this. And like, ours didn't. And if they had, we would have corrected that. I'm thinking of when I did some teaching in a school in the South, and they had little kids. For those on the podcast that are just listening, I'm doing the whole 2 fingers in the air thing, dating,
yeah,
quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so these kids would like be walking down the school holding hands. And I'm talking like 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 4th grade, 1st
little
grade,
kids.
little kids, and they're walking, and the teachers and the administrators like, it's so cute, and I'm watching this. Because I was an outsider.
Yeah.
I came in as a substitute. I was really an outsider coming in. And I watched this over a fairly long period of time. And then the kids would, be dating from breakfast to lunch and then break up at lunch.
Yeah.
And they go on to the next kid. And this was a pattern that they were developing in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade.
Right. What do you think their later life is going to look like?
That community had a monstrously large divorce rate.
Yeah.
Because they were training them
Little.
when they were small to be dysfunctional.
Right.
And so, and I remember someone else, don't you think that's cute? I said, actually, no, I don't. And not to be harsh, but you're training your children in a way that they shouldn't go.
Yeah.
And the divorce rate in our county was like most divorce rates are around 60, 55, 65%. Theirs was like 80.
Yeah.
And so whenever we did all that, we watched it. That's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And
there are families who allow their children to fight, like
Yeah.
literally knock them down, drag them out, fight,
Yeah.
you know? And when you allow children to do that, you may think it's making them tough and all this, but it's creating a lifestyle
Yeah.
of fighting
And
to
anger.
get your what you want, to
Yeah.
get your way, and anger works into it, and revenge works into it, and
Yeah.
all kinds of things that the Lord says to not operate in come into that style of life, and they take that into their adulthood, and then every time they've got a problem, they physically fight it out instead of learning
Right.
to use logic and words and understanding and wisdom, and they just have trained in the wrong way. It's dysfunctional.
I'm laughing because some dysfunctional families use their words, they're just not the right words.
Yeah, they're not the right words. Yeah.
You know, they call each other names, they cuss at each other,
Mhm.
they say some things. Even in a marriage, it can be dysfunctional. 'Cause like one of the things that Leslie and I agreed to when we first got married was,
Mhm.
I've never looked at her and said, "You're just like your mom."
Right.
That's dysfunctional. And she's never said, "You just like your dad." There are things about me that are just like my dad. And
Positives. I try to point out the positives, not the
and
negatives.
there are some things about Leslie that are just like her mother.
Right.
And we don't disregard it. We're not putting our heads
But
in
we're
the
not
sand.
using them as weapons when we're saying those things.
Right. And even if we have a disagreement, we're not using that to belittle one another
Right.
and do that. We decided we drew a line in the sand and said, this is where our family starts. It's just us. And as we have
Right.
children and add to it, we're going to teach them how to be functional. We did not
Yes.
allow our children to say, "I hate you,"
Mhm.
to each other. We did not allow them to call each other names.
Right.
We didn't allow them to fight over things. Did fights occur? Yes. But we squashed them quickly, and we would find out what the issue was. We resolve it, and we teach them how to solve problems
Right.
and how to solve conflict
Mhm.
with each other. This is what a functional family
Right.
looks like. We had
Right.
clear rules. We had clear boundaries.
Yes.
They knew certain things. If Les and I were going to spend some time alone, and our bedroom door was shut, our children knew they could knock on the door, but they couldn't just walk in.
Right. Right.
It was a boundary.
Mhm.
And we were available. We weren't neglecting them, but they knew. We taught them that.
Right.
What else did we do with our family? Oh, you've heard us talk about going into antique stores, and when kids were little, and it was a hands behind your back, no touch store,
Mhm.
and there was a boundary. Could they look at things? Sure. Could they hold things? Yes, but only with permission.
Right.
And so we had set clear, concise
Right.
things they could understand, and they could perform. Go ahead.
We cut off the whole mommy, 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 daddy, 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 daddy. We didn't do that. We didn't do that at all. But we trained our children that if they needed our attention, they could come lay their hand on our arm, and we knew they were there. And then they needed to wait until we acknowledged them, and then they could speak to us. But we didn't want them to go on and on and on and on. It's annoying not only to us but to others around them,
Yeah.
and we didn't want that kind of behavior happening. And so we trained them, we gave them a way to get our attention.
Yeah.
But we didn't allow them to just go on and on and on saying our name and whatever
Right.
else they were going to say.
And for us, the boundary for us was they put their hand on our arm or
Mhm.
hand. We put our hand on their hand to let them know we recognize you're there.
Yes.
We will finish this conversation,
Mhm.
be it between us.
Mhm.
We were pastors, so it might be someone at the church.
Mhm.
It might be on the phone.
Mhm.
But they learned that when we did that, okay, I will get attention, and I will get that.
It
need
was
met.
our signal, and I was talking to our daughter, our oldest daughter, not too long ago, and she was talking about how that signal that works for our family so well did not work for her husband, and so they have to find a different signal
Right.
for that to have, but still working on that situation where they're not just standing there trying, just repeatedly saying
Right.
your name or what they want and being rude to the people that you're speaking with. They learn to do whatever the signal is you've set up for
Right.
them, and then they wait for you to acknowledge.
Okay. So we've talked about dysfunction.
Right.
We've talked about function.
Mhm.
We haven't gone like deep. We could, but
We
we
could, but
didn't.
we haven't.
So now I want to talk about uniqueness. And see, this is what I think the world takes and twists, because that's what the devil does. He takes and twists
Yep.
truth. it has a element of truth in it, but not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll take and twist that
Mm-hmm.
so that people will believe it. So
Right.
here's the difference between dysfunction and what God created you to be, which is unique.
Right.
So unique is,
Means being the only one of its kind,
huh?
or being remarkable, special, and unusual.
You're unique. Thank you, VeggieTales.
Yes.
There's a song for those of you who didn't do VeggieTales. There's a song talking about the uniqueness of people. You know, God made you special, and He loved you very much.
That's what Bob says.
And
all the
it's
time.
all the time. And so we actually used that with our children growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So they would know that each one of them was very unique. They all were similar in a lot of ways, but they had their unique characteristics. They had their unique personalities.
Yes.
They had their unique dislikes and likes.
Mm-hmm.
They were unique, which makes them special.
Right.
And so we are special, you're special, and we're unique. And what the enemy tries to tell you is that in your uniqueness, that's dysfunctional. I'll give you an example. At our house, we don't do rated R movies. That's unique to a lot of other families who do rated R movies. And so you're like, well, what's wrong with you people? It's just a rating. True. And the rating is R, which stands for restricted,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got an age limit to it.
Yeah.
And so we just decided not only would we not let our children go see an R movie, we would lead by example, and we wouldn't go see an R movie. The only exception I made in raising my children was The Passion of the Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not Passion of the Christ,
Mm-hmm.
with Mel Gibson's movie that
Right.
came out
Yeah.
in the mid-90s. And so
2000s.
early 2000s, I've been corrected.
Anyway.
But my oldest child was old enough to go see that, so I took her with me to see that.
Yes.
And she could handle that. The other kids weren't old enough yet, so I didn't take them because I knew it was going to be graphic.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good depiction of what actually happened. So that's the only exception that I can remember that we ever did.
Mm-hmm.
As they age and they become adults, they get to make those decisions themselves. Do I still speak into that? We do.
Mm-hmm.
We still, like, well, we're going to go see movie blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you sure?
Did you look up the?
Did you research it?
Research it and see what it's about.
Look at the reviews, not from the world cultural side, but the biblical side. And they do. They do the homework, and they go. And sometimes they come back like, it was really, really good. And they come back, we probably shouldn't go to see that. It's like, I tried.
But they're trained and they're
Yes.
old enough to be able to decide when they see what's happening in the movie.
Yes.
Does that line up with the Word of God?
Yes.
Does that line up with what God says is truth? Is that something I really should watch, or
Yes.
is that putting garbage into my spirit? They're old enough to discern that now, and then act accordingly afterwards.
Yeah. Another unique thing we did when we celebrate Christmas, we don't celebrate Santa Claus.
Right.
And we put up a tree a time or two, but we don't usually put a tree up for the most part. But we exchange gifts and we talk about the birth of Christ and the reason God sent His Son to save the world. We're also unique in other things. We don't participate in Halloween that just took place, last night. We don't participate in that because we don't see that as a good thing. And so all of those things make us unique
Right.
and different. And here's the thing, when God made you unique, He did make you countercultural as a Christian, because this is a Christian broadcast. This is a Christian YouTube video. This is a Christian podcast, and we want you to know you're made to be different. And if you're not
Yes.
different, if you're not unique from
Right.
the world, then why would they want what you have?
Another area that we definitely strove to be unique in is we are not a sports playing family necessarily.
Right.
We have people who watch sports, but we are not a sports playing family. But we do have interests in other things like music and plays and just more artsy kind of things. But we always had the guideline in our household that if whatever we're trying to participate in interferes with church on Sunday or on Wednesday, which is usually when youth group was, then that's not okay.
Yeah.
We either have to be able to get out of those practices, or we have to be able to make them up some other time, or something else has to happen to participate.
Or we don't participate.
Or we don't participate.
Yeah.
And that is our stand as Christians. That wasn't just us being picky or
Yeah.
us being overbearing, but it was us saying, okay, as a Christian family, we are committed, first of all, on Sunday
Yeah.
to church, to being with the family of God and to being in God's presence. On Wednesday night in particular, maybe not all day Wednesday, but Wednesday night, that's when we also were setting aside for the Lord. And even when our children got old enough to work jobs, they also made that clear when they were being hired in their jobs. Our children do not work on Sunday because they're going to church. Now, there were times where they maybe worked later in the afternoon past church, and that was fine. But mostly they have had Sundays off, and if they needed a Wednesday night for youth group, now they're older, they don't do that so much anymore. But then they always put in that that's what they needed before they took a job.
Yeah.
And so honestly, we found that most employers would honor that and be fine with scheduling them around those two times.
Yeah. And if not, they're probably not going to get along with them anyway.
Right.
I'm thinking about when I was in my teens and applied for one of my first jobs, and it was at a place in my little hometown. And I let them know Wednesday nights I was a leader in the youth group, and Sunday nights where I was not available. So we did Sunday morning, Sunday night, we did Wednesday night. So I was not available for those 3 time periods. And the guy that ran the place was an agnostic at best, and he decided he would not hire me. My dad got mad at me. He's like, "You take the job, you work out the details later." I'm like, "No, you make a stand when you take a stand." So part of being unique and functional at times makes you look dysfunctional
or at least odd.
Yeah. Because you're taking a stand for what you believe is right.
The thing is, when we stand in our uniqueness, God will stand with us.
Yes.
He created us that way. He sees that we are honoring him. And when you do that, God says, I will help that person because they are willing to stand up for me. Absolutely. He will stand up for you.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Remember that you are special. Each family is special.
Yeah.
You're unique as individuals. You are special. You have special talents. You have special personalities. You have special, all the things that make you your own person. You have those all in you.
Yeah.
But then God says, I'm putting all of those people together as a family. And so you have a uniqueness, a specialness, a remarkableness. You have a something that's noticeable about you as a family. And so make that functional things. Make that godly things so that when you're standing out, it's because you're being godly.
Yes.
When you're standing out of, make sure that it's because you are standing for things that are right and you are doing things that are right. That just makes a statement to the world around you about God and his goodness and about you and where you're standing in your faith and in your convictions of living out that faith.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing that God took all the characters, all the talent, all the gifts, all the different personalities, he put them in your family and blended them in such a way that they function together.
Right.
It's a miracle. Because without God, and that's probably another reason people are more dysfunctional a whole other time, we don't have time today, but is because with God, those things blend and are beautiful. It's like a beautiful dish being put together to be consumed.
Yes.
And without God, it's just a jumbled up mess. And so we want to be together in those things. All right.
Yes.
Well, that's it for today. We will once again give you the shameless plug. Go get my wife's book, the Family Manual, a practical guide to raising a Christian family. Go to unbreakablefamily.com to get that. We appreciate you being here. Also, you can go there if you need help learning what your uniqueness is and how God has put you together with family and how to blend it right. We do marriage and family coaching.
Yes.
We can help you recognize that and see what that is. And one of the ways we do that is we take you back to God's original intent for family, and we show you the 5 mandates that God gave every family before the fall of mankind. And then from that platform, we teach you how to recognize your own uniqueness, your own special things, your own gifts as a couple and as a family. So with that said, thank you. We appreciate you being with us on the Unbreakable podcast.
Yes.
And we hope to see you again, and you see and hear us again this next week.
Be sure to like and share.
Yes.
And,
subscribe.
Do
all the
do
things.
the notifications. Do all those things. Be sure to do that.
Hit the notes. Hit the subscribe. Do it all. Share it with your friends. Give us comments. Let us know that you're out there. We love interaction.
Yes.
And so if you would do that, that would be a lovely, lovely thing. So God bless you. We love you. We're praying for you. And we're believing God to bless you and your family. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
Yes.
Bye for now.